What is up, boys and girls? This is Spooky Fridge bringing you another VGC episode from the league. This is a play against me and another one of the gym leaders from the league, Noobzilla, who goes by the name Corey on his gamertag. Essentially, I've got the team on top with my Arcanine, Gastrodon, Sableye, Lucario, Sylveon, and Zapdos. Now, he actually has a reasonably similar team in that we both share Sylveon and Zapdos. However, he's packing Heatran and Ludicolo, Salamence, and Bisharp. I wonder who the Mega is. Either way, so what we're looking at really is a very different team in terms of cores. So he's got Heatran obviously to handle Sun, Ludicolo to handle Rain. Salamence is just generally a threat. There's no real tell if it's special or if it's physical. And then of course there's Bisharp to stop Intimidators like my Arcanine from really getting in too frequently. Obviously, Sylveon itself being a massive threat now with Hyper Voice, and Zapdos really kind of finding its own now that it has Heat Wave support again and can get rid of HP Ice. Of course, can't underestimate Ludicolo, who's able to provide amazing offensive support through Fake Out, through Scald, Ice Beam, and through Giga Drain to handle things like Gastrodon and Swampert. So, I think we made mistakes. I think I made great plays. I'll show you each of the rounds. So, Corey's going to lead off with his Ludicolo and with his Salamence. Now, I realized that this is actually an alright lead up for me with Slurms and with Sneaky Face. However, the fact that he's potentially got three other special attackers, or three special attackers on the field if Salamence is a physical attacker, means that Sableye really isn't going to do a gigantic amount this game. The fact that he is pretty much immune to half the trouble coming from Fake Out here in the turn is advantageous. This Salamence is going to go for the Protect, because I am going to outspeed this Ludicolo and go for the Fake Out, if it went for Fake Out at all, as the Ice Beam gets deflected. So, not the best turnout for me, as this Ludicolo is faster than Slurms. It's not something I want to stick around for. I think my opponent was anticipating me just trying to go for the Ice Beam regardless, so I'm going to actually switch around into my Zapdos. As this Ludicolo goes for the Giga Drain on that slot, which is what you'd hope, as I could be bluffing and hoping that he goes for the Ice Beam, anticipating something else coming in. So that doesn't do a gigantic amount, but it will heal the Ludicolo back off that Fake Out damage. So I'm going to go for the Thunder Wave on this turn, just because that Will-O-Wisp missed before, so the Thunder Wave is far more advantageous on Sylveon. It ensures that even Slurms outspeeds him. It also ensures that there's a small chance that the paralysis will stop it. But Sylveon does get off a full power Hyper Voice. Now my Sableye is spec'd out to survive one of those from non-spec Sylveon. Just using standard builds like the one that Aaron Zhang recommends. I'm going to go for the Foul Play just to rack up as much damage as I can, because Sableye really is just going to flop around pretty uselessly. I was hoping for it to actually die from the Hyper Voice. Slurms is going to come out this turn, but he really isn't going to do anything at all this match. Not with that Ludicolo out in the field. It puts too much offensive pressure against my entire team, unfortunately. So Ludicolo is going to come in, and he is going to one-hit Slurms. Heal off all that damage from those foul plays and everything like that because of Gastrodon's gigantic HP. So definitely not a brilliant move, and Sableye doesn't even die thanks to the... Sableye doesn't even die thanks to the paralysis. However, given that the only Pokemon left is Chudan, my Lucario, I suppose it's not really too bad. So this is really my only chance to bring back the total amount that I'd... just to bring the score a bit closer to what I was hoping. So I'm going to go here, and I was hoping to get the Bullet Punch on the Sylveon. If I could rack up 2 Bullet Punches, there's a potential that I could get the KO. Ludicolo is going to go for the Scald and just knock out Sableye, forcing me into a 2-0 situation. A 2-1, sorry, on-field situation. I really should have gone for the Close Combat on Ludicolo, anticipating that Protect, but I wasn't sure at this point if it was Spec Sylveon or not. Even though my Sableye survived that hit, I didn't quite think that far ahead, which is definitely my mistake. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this Ludicolo out of the game, hoping just that if I can land 3 paralysis in a row, I can win. Otherwise, yeah, no, it's not happening. I mean, it's just not happening anyway. But I'm at least going to bring this down to a 2-0 win for my opponent. So that's going to be nice as I eliminate that Heatran from play. Which apparently this was a heavily defensive Heatran as well, max HP, max defense, which will kind of come back and bite my opponent down in a later match. This Hyper Voice is now going to take out Lucario as he has halved his defenses. So, not the best round 1 for me. I reckon my main issues, honestly, were bringing Sableye to begin with, and then bringing Gastrodon in, because it meant actually bringing Zapdos in on an attack, and while that attack could have been worse, it definitely wasn't the best. So, we'll see how everything goes in round 2. So, Corey's gonna now lead with his Zapdos and his Heatran, essentially. Now, this is actually pretty decent for me, as I'm gonna send out my Sylveon and my Arcanine. Obviously, the Heatran isn't really going to particularly care about my Hyper Voice, but it is still going to be reasonably useful. I know that Zapdos typically, unless it really is max special attack, can't survive a Hyper Voice, so I'm not too worried about that. I can bring him in later. However, I am going to now bring in Slurms, because Slurms does wall both of his Pokemon. There's no chance at all either of these guys have HP Grass. And I'm going to go for the Will-O-Wisp onto Zapdos just for residual damage. Now, this Heatran's already used up its Protect, which is nice, as Zapdos goes to the Tailwind. So what I'm essentially hoping is going to happen is I'm going to just be able to have Slurms come in and hit a lot of these guys really hard for a lot of damage. Heatran is going to be withdrawn at this point, though, so that's not brilliant, and Salamence is going to come in. Now, I was thinking that that might be the case, however, I really didn't want to pass up a potential KO on the Heatran. I go for the Helping Hand onto Gastrodon using Arcanine, and of course Zapdos is going to go for the Thunderbolt. It goes on Arcanine, and that is just how bulky Arcanine is. He does not care. So, anticipating the switch around, I go for the Scald. I don't land the Burn, unfortunately, but that's fine. That's just how luck goes. So, this turn, essentially what my opponent's going to try and do is he's going to withdraw Salamence, because it's not the best situation to be in. He's going to bring out Ludicolo, who is not going to really care about any attack I can throw at him with either of my teammates. The Zapdos is going to go for another Thunderbolt as I go for my Citrus Berry. Arcanine eats that up, which is nice because the Thunderbolt only does about 40%. I was go for the Will-O-Wisp actually onto the Ludicolo as Slurms goes for the Ice Beam onto the Zapdos slot. I was anticipating the Salamence protecting that turn as it Mega Evolves. With the burn damage now, Zapdos is going to be knocked out of the game, which is very handy. So things like that, small burns do rack up, especially if you don't really feel like you have a better turn coming up. So I'm playing this game a lot more productively, and hopefully that shows, but essentially now I've got a lot of trouble here with this Ludicolo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Gastrodon to take in offensive pressure. As I bring out Sylveon, I'm going to protect with Gastrodon. This is the Life Orb offensive Gastrodon with just a fair amount of investment in bulk. Blue Eyes is going to take that Earth Power like it doesn't matter, and then Giga Drain is going to be deflected right there. So, essentially how it's going to work now is now that the team's Tailwind is petered out and Zapdos can't bring that back, I feel safe enough to bring back Bailey, who's going to just come in, get another Intimidate that doesn't matter at all. However, you know, that's life. This is just a very specially oriented team, of course. As the Heatran goes for the Heat Wave, which is also not going to really matter too much. Ludicolo is going to go for Giga Drain onto Bailey's slot, which does pretty much nothing. Now, my thought behind this is that Arcanine is dead, but he's also one of the fastest guys on the field. I might as well see what I can do with him as far as that goes. Ludicolo takes that Hyper Voice reasonably well, and Heatran doesn't even flinch from it. It just does literally nothing. He almost heals more with his leftovers than anything else. So, thinking that Arcanine's going to die, I'm going to actually go for the Helping Hand onto my Sylveon, just boosting that Specs Hyper Voice even higher, which is really unfortunate for my opponent because it is actually going to end up killing this Salamence as far as it goes. Heatran himself is only going to take a little bit more damage, but at this point, from what I can tell by what that Heat Wave did, I'm not too fussed about that Heatran. I do have my Sylveon, of course, in the back. Sylveon does take a burn, unfortunately, which means that burn damage, once again, is going to rack up. Sylveon only having about a couple of turns left, I'd say, with that burn damage, if it doesn't get attacked at all. So, with Arcanine just basically out on front, I'm thinking on whether or not I'd like to actually let Arcanine die or not. I do have Lucario and Gastrodon in the back, and at this point, he does have just Ludicolo out right now. So, Ludicolo obviously going out for the Fake Out, but I'm Spec, so I can't do anything particularly strong against that. I do go for the Overheat on the Ludicolo slot, and I do get the KO, which is one nice thing about having reasonably decent special attack on Arcanine. I've put a bit of points into those, not too many though, and it just does pay off pretty intensely. Both Arcanine and Blue Eyes go down. Blue Eyes going down to a crit, but I don't think that really mattered. So it was pretty unfortunate that that's the crit that I got for my opponent anyway. So now I'm going to be able to bring out my Lucario, and I'm going to be able to bring out my Gastrodon, who are just basically going to both double target. However, just in case anything were to happen, I'm going to protect with my Lucario as I Mega Evolve, just ensuring no sort of shenanigans. I have no clue what's on this Heatran at this point. I know it's leftovers and that's about it. Obviously don't want to take a Heat Wave to the face, so I'm going to protect as I Mega Evolve just to ensure that next turn, if anything does happen, I can come in and with the close combat. I also do love having essentially just a 2-0 win just to make up for my last my last loss on the first round. So the second round went reasonably well for me. I feel like being really conservative with my Gastrodon actually led my opponent into attacking his slot a lot more, which means I can switch in things that really didn't care about Giga Drains, didn't really care about anything else on the field. And then obviously switching Gastrodon out to things like Arcanine to take those Giga Drains really was a good way of just wasting turns on my opponent's end. So we're going to have round 3 coming up right this second, and that's going to just essentially tie up the game, because we are tied 2-all on this best out of 3 match. So he's going to lead off with Ludicolo and Zapdos, which was his lead on round 1, which really did mess me up. Sorry, he led with Ludicolo Salamence on round 1. He switched around to Zapdos. I lead with my Lucario straight off the bat, and my Sylveon now. I reckon at this point it's going to be pretty safe to go for the Protect with Lucario and the Hyper Voice of Sylveon, as I'm pretty certain Sylveon is going to be faked out this turn. Not that anything any of these guys can do will really hurt Sylveon all that much, but I feel like the Zapdos may go for the Heat Wave, but in fact it does go for the Tailwind, which is still fine by me. Lucario is very fast, but probably not that fast. I probably want to bring him back, which is what I do, and I am going to send out my own Zapdos just to handle his. Now, of course, I do have a bit of trouble through both his Zapdos and his Ludicolo outspeeding mine, but I'm going to give it my best, and Sylveon is, of course, going to get a full Hyper Voice off this turn, which should take out his Zapdos from play. I unfortunately do end up having my Zapdos burned, but at least it did save my Lucario, so that, of course, always being useful. Now, his Zapdos is going to go down thanks to the Hyper Voice. Luckily, it wasn't very specially oriented. Zapdos does tend to be very physically bulky, as it tends to get threatened a lot by things like rocks. Although ice is still very prevalent, it's not the best thing to be threatened by. Now, he's going to send out his own Sylveon and his Heatran. I don't really have anything particularly good against Heatran to use, so it's definitely not the best thing on my end to take anything. However, Zapdos does end up going down before I can get a Roost off, which is still fine because it definitely wouldn't have taken the Hyper Voice very well. I'm going to get one free Hyper Voice off against his Sylveon. Luckily, mine does actually outspeed unless I won a couple of speed ties in a row, which is very unlikely. So I'm assuming that I'm probably just 1 point ahead, really. So I'm going to bring out Slurms this turn, and I anticipate the Protect here, which is fine by me. Obviously, Sylveon's Hyper Voice isn't going to hurt too much. Slurms does take this Hyper Voice really well. Just look at that. And essentially, I'm just going to try and knock out this Sylveon as fast as possible. Turns out this is a Citrus Berry set, which is pretty common. It's usually Citrus, Life Orb, and Specs on Sylveon. Occasionally you see something crazy like it's bulked out to survive a very specific hit and it has a weakness policy. But by the end, Sylveon's not really too fast, so it really is limited in the amount of moves and in the amount of items it can carry. Citrus Berry sets, of course, usually typically carry some supporting moves. However, all we see are Hyper Voice and Protect out of this one. So I'm going to get my last Hyper Voice off, eliminating this Sylveon from play as Slurms goes for the Scald, and I do end up eliminating this Heatran with a crit, so I'm not quite sure if that mattered. However, of course, another one of those would have definitely eliminated him from play. So we have the Ludicolo coming out now, and it basically goes for the Fake Out just on Sylveon to try and extend its own life at this point. Slurms is going to go for the Ice Beam as it's the only neutral hitting move on the Ludicolo, but with that Assault Vest, which is what every Ludicolo runs, it just eats it up. Ludicolo is going to go for the Scald here, not sure if that was just to speed up the match or if it was actually a misclick or anything like that, but I'm going to go for the Hyper Voice, and with the Ice Beam coming out, well, actually the critical hit on Hyper Voice ensures the KO. So, that was the match. Noobzilla did really well. He's actually very new to VGC. It was a team I helped design for him. Originally it was a Thunderous Theory and Rain team, but however he has since made improvements, so I believe he's made some changes to the actual Salamence set. The Heat Ran itself is new, and so is the just the inclusion of having Sylveon with the Citrus Berry, as I tend to prefer Specs for raw damage output, as you can see. So, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I hope you learned something, or that you just typically enjoy the commentary. Please leave a like or a comment just to let me know what you think and what you think I should do. If you want live commentaries, I can try and work that out. The lack of a capture card tends to be a bit painful for that, but I can try and work some sort of system out. I've got my new Canon camera just recording this, just to make it slightly better than my phone, and hopefully you enjoyed that.